Imagine, like a really heavy reinforced door inside your mind, and it's just bolted shut.
Right, totally locked down.
Yeah. And usually when we talk about, turning off your brain at the end of a long day, we picture just slumping on the couch.
Zoning out in front of a screen.
Exactly. Just letting everything go numb, like a total power down. But for today's deep dive, our mission is to look at a massive stack of neuroscientific fMRI scans, some ancient contemplative traditions, and like new psychedelic biology.
And we're doing this to figure out what happens when you actually quiet a very specific network in your brain.
Right. Because the data shows you aren't powering down at all. You are actually unlocking that heavy door.
Oh, completely. It's the exact opposite of powering down.
Yeah. And on the other side, it isn't numbness. It's this potential for extraordinary, luminous, even mystical states of consciousness. And the craziest part, it might be unlocked naturally by a really potent compound already pulsing inside you right now.
It completely upends how we traditionally view the brain. I mean, we are going to explore the precise anatomical mechanisms of how we construct our sense of self.
Which is fascinating on its own.
It is, yeah. But more importantly, we're going to look at the why. Like, why does intentionally dismantling this neural architecture radically change our understanding of human consciousness?
Yeah, it's a huge paradigm shift.
Exactly. We have to move away from viewing the brain purely as this machine that just, generates our thoughts. We need to start looking at it as a highly sophisticated, incredibly energy-intensive filter designed to actively block out a massive amount of reality.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to understand how to unlock the brain, we first have to understand the lock.
Right, the mechanism itself.
Yeah, and looking at the neuroscience, that lock is a very real measurable structure called the default mode network, or the DMN.
The DMN, yeah. It consists of midline structures, like the medial prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex.
And what's wild to me is that this network activates precisely when you are doing absolutely nothing.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive, right?
Totally. Like, you aren't doing a math problem, you aren't actively focusing on a task at work, you're just, I don't know, staring out a window on your commute.
Right.
And boom, the DMN lights up.
Right. It's basically the anatomical home of your ego.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's the inner narrator. It's the voice in your head that constantly says, I am.
So it's narrating your synthesis self.
Precisely. It's the narrator of your continuous bounded self across time, and it is a highly energy-intensive network that keeps that whole story of you running.
So when I'm, replaying an argument I had yesterday.
Or stressing about an email you have to send tomorrow.
Right. And I'm completely blind to the trees passing by my window.
Yes. That right there is your DMN completely dominating your conscious awareness.
It's like an overzealous PR manager living in your head, just constantly spinning the narrative of you, making sure you look good, worrying about social threats.
That's a great analogy, actually. The PR manager.
But the neuroscientific models suggest it isn't just narrating, right? It is an active suppressor, like an inhibitory override.
Exactly. It's actively holding that heavy door shut.
Right, to keep spontaneous or, ancient patterns of neural firing from reaching our conscious awareness. And I have to push back on this biologically.
Go for it.
Because I have a really hard time buying this. Evolution is absolutely ruthless about energy conservation.
Oh, definitely.
And the human brain already uses roughly 20% of our body's energy. So why on earth would we evolve an incredibly expensive, highly advanced network just to actively block our own natural neural activity from being experienced?
It seems like a massive waste, right?
Yeah, it seems like a huge biological waste of energy.
Well, what's fascinating here is the evolutionary trade-off. It is actually about survival and efficiency. The DMN functions as a gatekeeper.
Okay, how so?
Because if you're going to survive in a highly complex, socially demanding world, you need to be grounded in a predictable, stable reality.
Right, you need to know the rules.
Exactly. You need to know exactly where you end and the environment begins. You have to remember who your allies are, track complex social hierarchies, anticipate physical threats.
Which takes a lot of processing power.
It does. And if your conscious awareness was just constantly flooded with archaic, subcortical, limbic information, raw emotion, abstract visual processing, boundless sensory input, you simply wouldn't be able to cross a busy street.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you'd be too overwhelmed.
Right. You couldn't hold a job or maintain a relationship.
So it's filtering out the noise of our own underlying neural activity so we can just function as a cohesive individual.
Exactly. The brain utilizes something called predictive processing.
predictive processing.
Yeah, because instead of taking in every single raw piece of sensory data from the world and processing it from scratch, which would be overwhelmingly slow and computationally expensive, the DMN helps build a predictive model of the world.
So it guesses what's going to happen next based on your past.
Yes, and it filters reality to match those predictions. It is actually cheaper, evolutionarily, to run this PR manager than it is to process raw reality moment to moment.
That makes so much sense.
But this necessary suppression comes at a profound cost.
Right, because it's keeping us completely isolated from whatever's underneath that predictive model.
Exactly.
Which brings us to what exactly is waiting on the other side of that door when the PR manager finally takes a break. And the biology points directly to N-dimethyltryptamine, or DMT.
Right. A highly significant compound.
Yeah, and for anyone unfamiliar, this is known as one of the most ridiculously powerful psychedelic compounds on Earth. And the neurobiology establishes an undeniable fact, right? The human body natively produces it.
Yes, it's not just external. We synthesize endogenous DMT in our lungs, our liver.
And critically, right there in the cerebral cortex.
Exactly. It is literally in our cerebrospinal fluid.
Which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah. It is. The biological machinery for both producing and receiving naturally occurring DMT is entirely present and functioning within you. We have these structures called sigma-1 receptors.
Oh, right, the receptors.
Yeah, and they're densely packed in the limbic regions of the brain. Those are the areas associated with deep emotion and memory. And we even have specific transporter proteins whose sole job is to move DMT across the blood-brain barrier.
Which implies intent. I mean, why would the body build specialized escort proteins just to shuttle a psychedelic compound into the brain if it didn't have some crucial biological function?
Exactly. It is structurally related to serotonin and melatonin, but its actual purpose has always been this massive question mark in human biology.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the scientific question completely changes when you look at that biological infrastructure.
We no longer need to ask whether DMT exists in the brain.
Exactly. We know it does.
Yeah.
The question neuroscientists are having to ask now is, if our brains are actively producing and receiving one of the most potent psychedelics on Earth, what is preventing us from continuously tripping?
Right. Why aren't we just walking around the grocery store in a constant mystical state?
Yeah. Why are we so, well, normal most of the time?
Well, if the brain has a continuous supply of this compound and the DMN acts as an active suppressor, the logical biological equation is that one controls the other.
Oh, wow.
Researchers refer to this as the convergence hypothesis. Psychedelic neuroscience, consciousness studies, and meditation research all point to the conclusion that the default mode network is the primary suppressor of that endogenous psychedelic experience.
So it operates kind of like a seesaw.
Exactly like a seesaw. When your DMN is highly active, like when you're caught in that ego narrative, ruminating on a social interaction, the effects of that naturally produced DMT are kept sub-threshold.
They're essentially chemically dampened down to zero.
Right. But when the DMN drops its guard, the seesaw tips. That inhibitory gate lifts, the suppression stops, and suddenly access to those deeper, stranger, more luminous substrates of experience just floods into your conscious awareness.
Okay, but we need proof that the DMN is the actual gatekeeper here, right? Like, how do we know it's not just a coincidence?
That's the million-dollar question. To prove the mechanism, researchers looked at what happens when science artificially and forcefully disables the DMN.
Using psychedelics.
Yes. There are landmark fMRI studies out of Imperial College London where they scanned the brains of people given psilocybin, the active psychedelic compound, in magic mushrooms.
And psilocybin chemically binds to specific serotonin receptors, right?
Correct, the 5-HT2A receptors. And these receptors are heavily concentrated on the pyramidal neurons in the prefrontal cortex, which is exactly where the DMN is headquartered.
So they're targeting the PR manager directly.
Exactly.
And when they looked at the fMRI scans of the people on psilocybin, the network's activity just fractured, like the loop of self-talk completely broke.
Yes, the compound essentially scrambles the self-organizing tonic activity of the network.
Wait, tonic activity, do you mean like a baseline hum of energy that keeps the network synchronized and organized?
That's a great way to put it, yeah. Brain regions within a network need to fire together in a synchronized rhythm to maintain coherence. Psilocybin disrupts that synchronized firing. It destabilizes that baseline hum.
So the network falls apart.
And the data from the scans showed a direct correlation. The more profoundly the DMN was suppressed and scrambled on the monitor, the more intense the subjective experience of the person inside the scanner.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, as the network dissolved, they reported profound ego dissolution, complex visual phenomena, and contact with what felt like non-ordinary dimensions of reality.
I really want to clarify this for you, the listener, because it is so incredibly counterintuitive. We are so conditioned to think of taking a compound as like adding a chemical that creates a hallucination.
Right, like an additive
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. Like you were adding a new magical experience to the brain, sort of like installing a new piece of software.
Mm.
But the biology is saying that's not what's happening at all.
Not even a little bit.
These compounds don't add the experience. They just remove the filter. They turn off the PR manager.
Hmm.
And into that sudden silence, the subcortical information that was already there, that your brain is natively processing, just naturally floods in.
Yes.
It's like turning off the blazing city streetlights so you can suddenly see the Milky Way.
Mm.
The stars were always there. The light pollution was just blinding you to them.
That is a perfect analogy. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes how we understand the entire serotonin system.
How so?
Well, serotonin plays a massive modulatory role across all of your cortical activity. Those 5-HT2A receptors we mentioned are central nodes in regulating the DMN's predictive processing machinery.
Okay.
When those receptors are activated either by an external psychedelic like psilocybin or potentially by an elevated flood of your own internal DMT, your brain loosens its predictive grip on reality.
It stops guessing what's going to happen and actually just starts experiencing what is happening.
Yes. When the prediction stops, the suppression of bottom-up raw sensory information stops.
Wow.
Now, from an outside, purely functional angle, disabling the DMN looks like a severe brain malfunction. I mean, you absolutely cannot do your taxes or navigate a busy intersection in that state.
Definitely not recommended.
Right. But from an internal experiential angle, it is the brain dropping its reality filtering and revealing the raw, unfiltered substrate of awareness that was always humming underneath the ego.
So if the mechanism is just turning off the DMN, you shouldn't theoretically need external artificial compounds to lower this gate at all.
Not necessarily, no.
And humanity has known this for millennia. We've been cultivating the ability to do this naturally for thousands of years. Which brings us to the contemplative proof.
Right, the meditation studies.
Yeah. Decades of research on long-term meditators show that their brains are structurally and functionally different. A seasoned meditator's default resting state is biologically distinct from a non-meditator's.
Their DMN baseline activation is significantly reduced. They have permanently demoted their PR manager.
And when you break down the acute, specific meditation techniques, you can see exactly how they mechanically target the network's self-referential grip.
Exactly. Take open monitoring practices, for example, sometimes called choiceless awareness.
Right.
This is when a practitioner isn't focusing on a mantra or a visualization, but is just resting in bare awareness, just noticing whatever thought or sensation arises without judging it or attaching a narrative to it.
And the brain scans show this.
Yes, neuroimaging shows this practice directly reduces activity in the posterior cingulate cortex, a primary hub of the DMN. By simply observing, without narrating, the observer and the narration become disentangled.
They are essentially starving the ego of its narrative momentum. And they aren't zoning out or going to sleep.
Not at all.
The data specifically notes they are becoming more awake and aware of their environment while becoming less self-aware.
Yeah.
And then there are breath focuses practices, right? Reaching these deep absorption states called samadhi. In those states of highly concentrated, single-pointed focus, the inner narrator essentially ceases to exist.
And the subjective descriptions of those states, boundless, deeply peaceful, luminous, they perfectly match the phenomenological reports of what happens when the DMN stops suppressing subcortical experience via psychedelics.
Or look at body sensation practices like vipassana or body scanning. You absorb all your conscious awareness into the raw sensory experience of your physical body.
Which totally interrupts the narrative processing. The DMN cannot sustain its highly complex conceptual activity when the brain's attentional energy is fully absorbed in raw physical sensory processing.
It's a bandwidth issue.
Exactly. You are redirecting the metabolic energy required to maintain the abstract concept of you into pure physical presence.
But okay, here's the paradox I ran into while exploring this.
What's that?
What does this all mean for someone who just struggles to sit still on a cushion? Because if I sit there and try really, really hard to turn off my brain, isn't that very effort a form of self-referential DMN activity.
Oh, absolutely it is.
Right. If I'm sitting there thinking, stop thinking, stop narrating, you're doing a bad job meditating, quiet down, my DMN is actively working to generate those thoughts. It's evaluating my performance. How do you suppress a network when the very act of trying to suppress it just fuels the network?
That is the ultimate contemplative trap. You literally cannot fight the default mode network with the default mode network.
What do you do?
What works biologically is intention without effort.
Yeah.
You cannot forcefully shut the door. You have to literally starve the network of the energy that feeds the self-narrative loop.
Okay, intention without effort.
In Zen traditions, this is often described as not doing. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's referred to as rigpa. It is the practice of withdrawing the fuel of effort entirely.
That makes sense.
You aren't violently suppressing the narrator. You are simply refusing to hand it a microphone. You just let it speak in the background until it runs out of energy.
Refusing to hand it a microphone. I really love that. But, since effort can so easily backfire into overthinking, it's a huge relief that human biology provides these built-in backdoors into DMN suppression.
Yes, the natural biological hacks.
These are practical protocols that you could access without having to be a monk on a mountain for 20 years. And the first one is something we all do every single night.
Hypnagogia.
Yes, hypnagogia and sleep architecture. That weird liminal transitional space right between being awake and falling asleep.
The hypnagogic state is biologically associated with a natural loosening of prefrontal inhibition. As you drift off, the self-referential narrator naturally dissolves because the brain is shifting its electrical state.
It's right there every night?
It is one of the most accessible natural portals we have. Practitioners who cultivate the ability to hold their conscious awareness right at this threshold, such as in lucid dreaming practices or Tibetan dream yoga, consistently report geometric visual phenomena.
And luminous environments,
Oh.
which are strikingly identical to reports of exogenous DMT use.
Exactly.
And if you want to intentionally practice that, there's a protocol called Yoga Nidra. It's an entire system designed to guide you down towards sleep, systematically withdrawing your sensory attachments. But you train yourself to hold your awareness right at that hypnagogic threshold.
You hover right exactly where the DMN suppression is peaking.
Yeah, but you stay awake to experience the subcortical information that floods in.
Incredible practice.
Another backdoor is sensory reduction, like float tanks. You take away the gravity, the light, the sound, all the external sensory anchors that give the DMN the data it needs to build its predictive scaffolding.
Because without that constant influx of external data to process and predict against, the narrative self has nothing to push against. It begins to dissolve, and the spontaneous internal imagery of the deeper brain emerges.
We also see this mechanically achieved through breathwork protocols, right? Like holotropic breathwork, intense pranayama, or hyperventilation technique.
Yes, those are very effective.
Let's explain how that actually works, because it sounds like magic, but it's really just plumbing, right?
Exactly. It is purely mechanical. By intentionally altering the rhythm of your breathing, you change the oxygen and carbon dioxide ratios in your blood.
Okay.
Dropping carbon dioxide levels causes your blood vessels to constrict. This dramatically alters cerebral blood flow. Because the default mode network is such a highly active, energy-hungry hub, altering that blood flow mechanically forces it to downregulate.
It literally doesn't have the blood flow to keep running.
Right. Its activity is suppressed, while older limbic and archaic brain structures continue to fire. This reliably leads to deep emotional catharsis and spontaneous visual experiences.
Wow. And we absolutely cannot ignore the pineal hypothesis in all of this.
No, we definitely can't.
The pineal gland is that tiny structure deep in the center of the brain that has long been called the third eye by mystical traditions. And while it's still, partly speculative as the sole source of a massive endogenous DMT flood, the biological anatomy is perfectly staged for it.
The pineal gland already acts as a chemical factory. It utilizes serotonin as a precursor to synthesize melatonin, which regulates our sleep cycles.
Right.
The enzymatic leap from melatonin to DMT only requires a relatively minor molecular tweak, basically the addition of 2 methyl groups. And the gland contains all the necessary raw materials and enzymes to accomplish this.
And crucially, the pineal gland sits outside the heaviest shielding of the blood-brain barrier.
That's the key detail.
Meaning if it synthesizes a burst of DMT, it doesn't have to fight through a blockade. It has a direct biological on-ramp to dump that compound right into the cerebrospinal fluid, effectively bathing the brain in it.
This raises an important question, perhaps the most critical realization of this entire exploration.
Well, what's that?
When we look at all these wildly disparate biological backdoors, near-death experiences, deep float tank sessions, hyperventilative breath work, profound meditative absorption, or hovering at the hypnagogic threshold of sleep,
Yeah.
why is there a unified phenomenological signature?
Wait, phenomenological signature? You mean the subjective experience of what it actually feels like for the person going through it?
Yes. Why do human beings across totally different cultures, eras, and induction methods consistently report the exact same subjective experiences?
It's uncanny.
Geometric visual fields, encounters with archetypal entities, a feeling of overwhelming luminosity, and a profound sense of contact with a reality that feels strangely more real than ordinary waking life.
It's not just a series of random, chaotic hallucinations. It's a remarkably consistent signature.
Precisely. And the underlying science suggests that whatever the precise neurochemical trigger is, whether it's a massive flood of endogenous DMT from the pineal gland or a radical shift in serotonin modulation, the precipitating mechanical factor is always consistent.
The suppression of the default mode network.
Yes.
So what does this all mean? Bringing all this together, turning off your brain is not about becoming unconscious or numbing out or escaping reality.
Not at all.
It is a highly precise, strategic quieting of a very specific, socially trained threat monitoring network. When you successfully turn off the ego's constant narration, you aren't left with an empty void. You are left with a selfless, massively expanded wakefulness. You are opening a biological door.
And the deeper philosophical implication here is staggering. It challenges our most basic foundational assumptions about reality.
It really does.
What the neuroscience is suggesting is that altered states of consciousness, the profound states described across human history as enlightenment, mystical union, or gnosis, may not require adding anything external to the brain at all. They may simply require the learned capacity to withdraw the neurological activity that is actively blocking them. Pure, unadulterated awareness, attuned to pattern and sensory presence rather than narrative and threat prediction, might actually be the human brain's native ground state.
The native grounds.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is just chronically overlaid moment by agonizing moment by the incredibly costly, heavy machinery of selfhood.
Which means the next time you catch yourself totally lost in rumination, stressing about something you said in the past, or tangled in anxiety about what your boss thinks of you, you can remind yourself that it's just your DMN working overtime.
Right.
It's just the machinery of selfhood grinding away, running its predictive models. And you actually have the biological tools built into your anatomy, whether it's through a simple body scan, altering your breathing, or just resting in choiceless awareness to quiet that network down and step out of the loop.
The contemplative traditions have said for millennia, be still and know. Now, the neurobiology is finally mapping exactly what that stillness chemically costs the nervous system and the profound, luminous reality it allows to flood back in return.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over today.
Okay.
If our everyday, ordinary waking consciousness is essentially a highly filtered, heavily edited simulation managed by an anxious PR manager whose only job is to keep you predictable and functioning in a complex social world,
Yeah.
what fundamental luminous truths about reality is your brain actively hiding from you right now, bolting behind a heavy door, just so you can safely get through your daily commute?